Up next, we have Kel, who will tell us about how to speak office politics using technology. Thank you, Kel.
All right. Who's ready to talk about some data? Yes. Usually, no one wants to hear about it. I'm talking to my mom. She's like, yeah, that's great, babe. What's a database? Yeah. Anyway, the title of my speech is Defeating Office Politics with Technology. But really, it's about this second thing, that there's always a way. You can find a way around a problem and deliver some actual value. And I think there's actually something that I can call back to from Dalvinder's presentation where she said, and it was Jenny was the author?
Yeah.
She said, you don't need to do nap projects. You need to do things that actually matter. These little things that don't deliver much value, you need to focus on the things that actually matter. And this is about delivering those things quickly, because at large organizations, it can be really hard to deliver something. Who here has worked at a large organization? I'm thinking 100 or more people. Okay. Can you guys guess what Dilbert's answer is to their problems? I wonder. Anybody? People, you got it.
Yeah.
People is the problem. And it's not necessarily that people are the problem. People are usually good. But you get enough people together, and it's just a lot of process to do everything. We put rules in place because we think we need them, but it just slows things down. And if you're trying to execute any project, especially a data project, it just ends up taking forever. Now, bureaucracy isn't always a bad thing, but it is bad when it's in your way and you're trying to do something meaningful. So this is the Oxford Data Meetup. Does anyone here maintain databases or some kind of data architecture? Yep?
Yes.
Okay. I need access to your database credentials. What are you going to say?
It's a nightmare.
You're going to at least say why, if not no, right? There's a lot of knowledge silos in these big companies, so never mind getting the password and the username to a database. You just need to get networking access. Can you talk to the database itself? Is anyone here in networking or IT operations? Anything like that? Well, in case you're not that technical, you need to ask someone to be able to talk to every single computer on a network. And usually those rules are very strict. So first of all, you need to be able to get to the database or whatever the system is that's storing the data, and then you need the username and password. And both of those things are going to be very hard to get. You're going to need to prove why you need that access. You're usually going to hear people say, I'd like to learn more about your use case. Now, bureaucracy isn't always bad. Does anyone here know what Facebook's motto used to be? Its current one is on the screen, and it's much less cool.
Move fast and break stuff.
Yeah.
Used to be move fast and break stuff, break things. I don't know exactly what the word was, but that was way back when they first started. And even Facebook, a company that is notorious for being very hacker-friendly, very move fast and break things, they eventually went so boring, it now says move fast with stable infrastructure. I can't imagine a more boring sentence. Like, that is who we are, especially Facebook. They have so many cooler things. But bureaucracy isn't always bad because there's lots of people that depend on these systems. It's our livelihood, and real damage can be done if you don't take care of computers nowadays. I mean, the Spanish power grid just went down, like the entire country, and I'm almost certain it was a computer problem, right? So we do need these things to move slowly, in general. But if you're trying to do something, it can really get in your way. So, I'm Cal Mitchell. I'm a data engineer and consultant. How do I try to move fast when someone hires me to do something? Usually the companies that I work for, they're large Fortune 500 companies who they don't even know how many databases they have, never mind being able to get access to all of them. So how do I go about actually getting data, consolidating it so that they can do analytics or scan for personal information or any of these projects that big companies have to do? Sometimes they're kind of boring, but sometimes they can be quite fun and meaningful. I look for two things. And the first thing is a subset. There are two things in the first thing. I look for centralized information repositories, and that's just a fancy word for some place that people has brought all their data together already. And you do usually have one, usually, even if you don't know it. And the second thing is you need the person who has root, or the admin credentials to those systems. This is a technical talk. We're going down the rabbit hole. The first thing you should look for if you're trying to find an information repository is an existing ELT or ETL pipeline. If you don't know what that is, actually, quick question, does anyone know what an ETL pipeline is, or ELT? I know you know, Priscilla. Anybody else? What is it?
Extract, transform, and load.
Extract, transform, and load. It's a data pipeline. It means you're moving data from one place to another and possibly transforming it, the T in the middle, to get to some place where you can do analytics on it. And ETL happens at every single large company. They need to take data from what they're selling or their website visits or something like that and bring it together in a centralized place so they can answer questions like, what was our best selling product? Who is our best salesperson? Where do we have sensitive information that needs to be protected? They need to do these ETL pipelines. And it's great if they have one that's already pretty close to what you need. Doesn't always happen. If it does, great, you can just start doing what you need and do your analysis, but doesn't always happen. And when that doesn't happen, that's when you run into the problem where you need to ask for credentials. You need to ask for networking access. And the companies I work for, they have thousands of databases. There's no way I'm going to be able to get access to all of them, especially if it's a kind of project where you need all of them. And this is the secret. Here is the secret, guys. If you're trying to execute a data project where you're running into access issues, it's the backups. These large companies, they usually have a bunch of systems where they back up their databases. You've probably heard this. You should probably have backups of your own information too. I know you don't. Some of you might. I sometimes back up my stuff, not really. But these large companies, they take their data seriously and they do back it up. So if you're using Amazon, AWS, if you're using Azure, if you're using GCP, all of the databases in those clouds back up automatically nightly, or at least it's easy to configure them to do so. And that means that all of your data is backed up in one single place where you can discover and access it easily. You just need the person who has the key. I was already on the right slide. And the thing about backups is that it's much easier to gain access to them. There's only so much damage you can do. If you delete all of a company's backups, they're going to make more of them tonight. You probably shouldn't do that. You'd get in real trouble, but limited damage. And that brings me to my example, a current project that I'm executing for a Fortune 500 company in America. So this large company, like I said, they need to bring all of their data together so that they can do some kind of analysis. They need to scan for PII, that's personal information that needs to be protected under GDPR and whatever the acronym is for the California one, and do some basic data governance work. They just don't even know how many databases they have. And the problem is, they're a large company. That means that they've probably bought other companies. They operate across different countries. There's tons of information silos. So, for example, the team in Mexico, you can't get to the database in Mexico because it's just in a factory somewhere doing whatever it's doing, and you need someone to physically go and alter a switch for you. You know, you're not going to be able to do that overnight. You're going to have to submit all kinds of tickets for that to happen. And this slows development velocity. And this is typical of a large organization where you need to gather everything together. And the tool that I created to help with this is called Albatross. And the idea is Albatrosses migrate, right? They're very good at migrating, and I'm migrating databases. And Albatross is a wrapper around a piece of open source software that I made to move data between databases. And here's the architecture of Albatross. I'll try to be very clear and business friendly about it. I'll go to this one. So Albatross lives over here. It doesn't actually matter where it is, but I happen to know AWS the best. That's the cloud that I can develop with. So I put Albatross which is a UI inside AWS, and it needs a database itself to operate. This is where it gets interesting. Inside AWS, GCP, and Azure, the big cloud providers, they have all of their databases backed up every single night. And that means that you can discover them with a single API call. You can say to AWS, hey, AWS, tell me all of the databases that are inside all of your regions. And it can do that for you. You cannot do that for all of the databases and all of the factories in Mexico. It just doesn't work that way. Once you've discovered all of those things, you can then restore the databases. You say, hey, tell me where all the databases are, and give me the latest time that they were backed up, and then you restore that backup into a private subnet. It's significant that it's a private subnet because they don't want the data to leak. There's no data egress possibility when it's in a private subnet. And SQL Pipe, which is my free open source tool, then discovers the structure of the database and moves it to Snowflake. Has anyone here heard of Snowflake? Okay, what is Snowflake? Anybody?
It's a platform, so it's essentially helps reduce the amount of work you need to do as a data engineer by providing a nice platform that is kind of cloud agnostic for data engineering and data analytics.
Excellent answer. Yeah. You should work for Snowflake. It's a data platform. People want to get data into it. Its core product is a data warehouse, which is a database that's optimized for analytics, but they've since grown to the point where they have all this data in these disparate systems, but like I said, they wanted to bring it together. That's where it actually has value. If you can combine who your customers are with who your suppliers are and where all of those geolocations are, that's when you start to get real business knowledge, and that's what they want to do. So they want to get it into Snowflake, into a landing account, and from there they can share it to other Snowflake accounts, maybe it's other divisions, maybe it's other companies. But the point is they just want to bring it together so that they can do something valuable with it. Before I move on, does anyone have any questions about the technical architecture of Albatross? I'd love to answer some questions.
So the backend Postgres is a database of the various databases.
That's right. But it actually excludes itself, so it doesn't transfer itself.
Okay, so then the Albatross gets a list of what it needs to do from that and does it.
Precisely. Basically what Albatross does is it gets the list of databases, restores them, and then instructs SQL Pipe, my other program, to move the data. So Albatross doesn't really do much by itself. So, sure, go ahead.
So is the this private subnet in the same cloud account?
Yes,
Yeah.
It has to be in the same cloud account. It can be cross-region. You can replicate snapshots across regions. For Azure and GCP, the story is a little bit different, and actually I'm still working on those integrations. AWS is the one that it currently works on, but I'm extending the integrations now. Yeah, sorry.
So if you have your database in Mexico loading on someone's laptop
Or Canada, or the United States.
or wherever it is,
Yeah.
why would it be backed up but unable to access?
That's an excellent question.
Do you not
It
just
would
get
be able
just
to-
local?
It would, well,
And
of
not
course,
backed up.
something needs to be able to talk to it if it's being backed up, right?
Mm.
A database is useless unless something can talk to it. And usually, these large companies will have a backups management system. So Rubrik is a popular one that I've worked with
Okay.
before. AWS, GCP, and Azure, they make it so easy to back up databases that these traditional backup systems were just kind of forgotten about. But there were systems before that to manage on-premise backups.
See, yeah,
So there is still a centralized place where those backups exist.
okay.
Remember, there's always a way. That's the title of the talk. It's always somewhere. Anything else?
Could it be problematic? You mentioned GCP or and all that, but you have to back up the data in the same region. So I'm thinking European data leaving Europe or American data leaving the US is always an issue.
Yeah, those are business questions at this point. Technically speaking, it's always possible to transfer your data in some way. So when you back up something in AWS, it backs up to the same region.
Mm.
So you can make the choice to take that data out of Europe. You can push the button. Whether or not that's compliant or not, that's up to the individual business. However, you can do all of this within, say, the EU or the UK if you wanted to. Like, that could be the centralized place where you bring it all together. What I would say is that if countries want to prevent companies from bringing all their data together to do analytics, they're really shooting the companies in the foot, and that's a bit unfair. Maybe you have to scrub the data on the way out, so personal information is no longer going to America, but there does need to be some leniency to allow these companies to do these kinds of projects.
So if you can curate those backups, why don't they do it themselves?
Sorry?
If you can curate like on the cloud for the backups, yeah, why don't the organizations do it themselves?
That's a great question. I don't have a good answer for that. They totally could. It's just a question of, can you write the code to orchestrate the backups and the termination and then the discovery of the databases and the movement of data and the error handling. It's not a trivial thing to do all that. Building data pipelines, you can get it to run once and you say, great, I finished it, but no, there's actually going to be 1,000 errors that you find out over time as you actually deploy it into production. So it's totally possible that people are doing this already. But it's just hard. That's why.
I think sometimes there's legacy software involved and there's no one around to.
That's another great reason.
Yeah.
No one knows how it works anymore.
Yeah.
Don't touch it. Anybody else? Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so is the reason you built this effectively to get at this data that nobody was really accessing until you built this tool essentially that accesses all these backed up databases?
It's not that no one was accessing it, it's that it was very siloed.
Okay, yeah.
And a lot of these big organizations, they're recognizing that they need to bring things together. They want to break down these data silos and practice something called master data management. But they just get to this point where, they hire some smart people to do it and they run into that bureaucracy problem where it's a year later and they've only integrated 10, 20 databases, which is still nothing. But you're just moving so slowly at that point that you can't actually deliver value.
Right. So you wanted to speed up the kind of.
That's right.
Yeah.
We're making
process.
compromises on the data frequency and our control over the ETL pipeline. Specifically, we can't do the T, we can't transfer things.
Okay.
But the compromise is that it's actually working and it's actually done.
Yeah. Well, I imagine once it's loaded somewhere, you could do some more transformation. Once it's all
Exactly. Once it's in
aggregated,
Snowflake, you're golden.
It's in Snowflake. Exactly.
Yeah. Then you're all set. Sure.
Got another question. How do you make sure you got zero knowledge of the data you have? Or do you promise to your clients that you have?
This is self-hosted,
Oh, okay.
so it's all in their
I see.
environment. Yeah.
Okay.
And there's a really great way to build people for software that they're self-hosting called AWS Marketplace, and all the other clouds have it as well. So they basically pay me by the hour
I see.
that it's deployed in their environment. All right, I'm gonna move on. I'm so happy you guys had questions. Thank you so much. There will be time for more at the end. So the key here is that the clouds can reset the master credentials. You remember one of the very first things that I said is a problem is you need to ask people for credentials. Clouds can just reset the master credentials of databases. So you can see here I have some database name that I've restored and I'm now resetting the master credentials. Now I can get into the database and I didn't have to ask a DBA, hey, can I have the master username and password? They're probably not going to give me that without at least a couple of Zoom meetings, talking to their supervisor, etc. As they shouldn't. But if it's going to slow me down, then that's my problem. And once you have all of your data in place, you can do more interesting stuff with it. So for example, this is just a little plugin that I made to Albatross that scans for PII, personally identifiable information. That's the stuff that's heavily regulated in the EU, UK, etc. Not so much in the States. We've got a long ways to go on that. But you can see here, I've built like a tree-like structure where the red signifies structures that have PII in it. And this could be a great visual aid to a data governance person to say, hey, these are the places where we need to protect this data. These are the things that we can't send to another country because we may not be compliant. So I know that data engineering, data in general, isn't always the most exciting thing, but it is work that needs to be done. And I think when you make a good dashboard, come on guys, it's pretty cool. When you like make a cool chart on Excel and you see something that wasn't obvious before and you get to tell people about it, I actually get really excited, and that's why I'm in data. And going back to Snowflake and how good it is, secure data sharing is a really great option where if you get all your data into one place, okay, now you have it in one silo. But how can you move it? How can you make it accessible to other parts of the companies? And Snowflake is not the only company that has this, but they are multi-cloud, and they're kind of the market leader right now. So I tend to focus on them. And they can do zero copy data sharing. So you don't even have to move or copy the data anymore. You can just grant somebody access to it. And now that other side of your company has the same insights that you worked so hard to get. Now you're the person who at the very beginning, you're the existing ETL target. You can be the superhero that other people say, hey, can I tack onto that? And I see that a lot, where you build one of these systems, and once somebody finds out, ooh, you have that data, can I get access to it? Sure can. It's in the platform. So the reason this moves so much faster, and I did say this before, is that there's less friction to get access to backups than there is prod. Prod meaning production, that's the actual live running computer. This is just the example of the company that I didn't make this for them, but they are an early user of it. And I like to have one use case to make things concrete, so I'm not just talking to you theoretically. If I wanted access to the production systems, I would have had to access their cross-cloud networking thingy. And it was really impressive, and it had a huge API, and I took one look at it, and I said, oh my God, this is gonna be weeks just to learn how to interact with this networking system. So before I'm even starting to move any data, I have to understand this new tool. I'd have to get credentials for thousands of databases. In italics, thousands. Never gonna happen. I'm never gonna convince 1,000 people taking care of databases to give me their credentials. Even if I had 5 meetings a day, every day, you know, well, I guess maybe that could work. That would be about 1,000, but we're not gonna do that. Once I got credentials, or even before, sorry, I'd have to open the firewalls. Also never gonna happen for 1,000 databases. Plus I'd have to get, you know, roles and all that kind of stuff. It's just not gonna happen. What do you need to access the backups? Well, you can actually get everything that you need from one person, it turns out, from this particular company. I needed these things, or their equivalent, in all of the cloud providers. I needed an IAM role, which is basically a way to specify permissions in these public clouds. I needed a VPC, which is a place where I could create a separate networking environment. That would be this kind of like fenced in area where nothing can come in and nothing can go out without permission. These subnets are just part of the VPC. I needed a security group, which is those rules that say what can come in and what can come out. And then I need an ECS cluster, which is a way to run Docker images very easily. If you don't know, Docker is a very easy way to combine a bunch of software and run it. That's it. That's all I needed. And one person could deliver all of that to me. And now, I have this. I don't need to ask anyone for anything. So just bringing it back to the main idea, and I'm going to try to make it a little bit more generalizable, because this is just one time that one thing worked, and it's not like there's always going to be backups to every data problem that you ever have. But you need to get creative and think about who's the one person that could give me access to everything that I need if I make some compromises. Is it okay if I have a slower data refresh rate? Maybe your use case, you just need data that was refreshed once a quarter or something like that. You may not have complete control over the process. You know, you might not know where the data goes after it hits Snowflake. You may not be able to transform it on the way there, but again, you'll actually be able to get something done. And that's the point. You can actually deliver value quickly in data projects. Here's what Albatross, the tool, looks like. Or sorry, this is just the marketing page. Albatross, it allows you to transfer from cloud native databases to Snowflake. And this is just a screenshot of the home page. And yeah, it kind of is self-explanatory. If you're interested, you can check it out at albatrosstransfers.com. We're building more cloud and data warehouse integrations now, but this talk is not about Albatross. It's just about getting stuff done. Questions? Sure.
So two related questions. So from that, I gain the main objection is sort of operational people saying you're going to break my database if you query it.
Yes. Or you queried it so hard that it locked it up and other users can't get to it, something
Yeah, so
like
you
that.
can't write or whatever.
And it can happen. I've
Yes,
done that.
Yeah, no, certainly it can happen. So have you ever got in trouble from the other aspect of loading all this data, basically sort of by going around the side, and then loading data you're not allowed to see, or people aren't allowed to see, more information security rather than operational?
Yeah, you're talking about data governance, and that is that question needs to be answered unequivocally before you start doing anything like this. And you will get pushback from the people who maintain those production systems, but ultimately, if it's literally your job to do this, like if you were hired as an information governance manager, which is the title of the person that I interact with, and their mandate from the CEO is, I need you to bring our data together, then you can't really listen to those individual voices saying, no, we can't do this. You need to say, yes, we can, because this is literally my job.
Okay, so it's about getting the right backer to push it.
The right backer and someone who has a title of information governance manager, they're gonna be familiar with the data compliance laws. Because ultimately what goes on inside of a company, as long as the CEO says it's okay and it's legal, you should be able to do it, right? You know, if there is still some internal politics, I mean, that's always gonna happen. But ultimately, if you have the mandate to do it from a high enough place and it's legal, then you just kind of ignore people who object. And the whole point of this is to kind of go over their head in the search of efficiency.
Yeah.
But you should never do it, you know, if there's any doubt that you should. Sure.
If you've got kind of slow backups and then multiple people kind of piggybacking off your new pipeline, is there no risk of sort of multiple different sections of the business having different sources of truth? They're looking at different bits of data.
Excellent question. Doesn't matter how hard you try, it's going to happen anyways. But you'll notice here, it goes into a landing account. I promote this as a architecture where all of the data, as it comes in, no transformations are applied here at all. No one creates copies in here. The only thing that puts or upserts data into this system is your pipeline. And so that data is clean. Where it goes from there and what anyone else does with that, there's gonna be duplicates, it's gonna be messy, so it's gonna happen, but you should try to at least maintain one. I call it a landing account, some people call it a clean room. You might have a different name. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Cool. Anybody else? Yep.
Yeah, so you mentioned this Albatross system, it's open source.
Albatross is not open source.
That's not open source, okay.
That's a licensed product that I'm selling, and if
Okay.
you want it, I'd be happy to talk about it. The worker SQL pipe is an open source product. I used to be a data engineer. That was my full-time job. I kept running into the same problem over and over again. How do I move data from this database to another? That's like the core task of data engineering. And I built an open source tool, and that has allowed me to be a consultant and market my services for that. And Albatross is just a wrapper around SQL pipe, essentially.
So what is, like, how did you code up SQL pipe? Is that Python? Is it?
It's Go.
Go. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
I quit my full-time job. I was living in Boston. I moved to Portugal, and I was a surf bum for a couple of years, and I coded SQL pipe. That's how I did it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, good times.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Cool. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you.